What would happen if I told you that the exchange of positions between Leclerc and Hamilton was not any order, but the tip of the iceberg of a technical conflict, strategic within Ferrari? Are you sure you know the whole truth behind this controversial Ferrari movement? That Sunday in Barcelona did not start with drama. There was no rain, there was no chaos at the exit, there were no major incidents in the first curve. But there was something latent. A subtle detail that only those who follow this sport can perceive. A Hamilton that did not get the usual rhythm, a Leclerc with hunger of prominence, and a team that knew that it could not be wrong, not so soon in the season. From Friday, the atmosphere in the red garage was tense but contained. Ferrari had arrived in Spain with a clear mission: to consolidate its career rhythm, demonstrate that it could compete with McLaren and Red Bull, and that Hamilton's arrival would not be only a media blow, but a commitment to the title. However, as usually happens in this sport, the theory met reality, and reality was much more complicated. When the traffic lights went out, the attention focused on the leaders, but in the middle group, the positions began to adjust as chess pieces. Leclerc, who had classified back than usual, had made a tactical play on Saturday. He decided not to score time in his last attempt in Q3, saving a game of new soft tires for the race. It was not a decision made lightly. It was a calculated strategy, a high-risk commitment that only a pilot with a complete vision of the race dares to execute. I knew that in the first phase of Sunday that extra game could be crucial. And it was. In the first laps, Leclerc advanced with contained but effective aggressiveness. He was coming back after his new partner, Lewis Hamilton, who could not defend his position forcefully, partly because something was not going well with his car. The moment approached. Leclerc was already in the DRS area, and each curve became a silent battle between two worlds, that of a young pilot who had been fighting for years to be Ferrari's absolute leader, and that of a legend that just landed in Maranello with the weight of his name and 7 world titles on tow. None wanted to give in, but one had more rhythm. And Ferrari knew it. And then it happened. A radio message, direct, without filters, bluntly. Leclerc did not supplicate. Demanded. With the accuracy of a strategist who perfectly understands the race map, he reminded his engineers that his Saturday's decision could not be wasted. That staying behind Hamilton was to throw overboard all his planning. That he was stuck, and that if they really wanted to compete, they had to act. It was then that the conflict went from internal to public. It was no longer just a telemetry discussion among engineers. It was a clear choice: to protect the ego of a newcomer superstar or maximize the potential of a pilot who had built his Sunday since the previous day. Ferrari, under the direction of Frédéric Vasseur, chose the second. But that choice is not made without consequences, neither internal nor external. What came later is a matter of deep analysis, and it is exactly what we are going to unravel in the rest of this video. Formula One, in its purest essence, is not only a battle between cars, but a constant confrontation between decisions, egos, and opportunities. And if there is a pilot on the grill that has lived that fight in own flesh for years, that is Charles Leclerc. For him, every weekend does not represent only one career, but a statement. A reaffirmation that, despite Ferrari's ups and downs, it remains the man who must be trusted. And in Montmeló, that was clearer than ever. From the start, Leclerc was meticulous. His departure from the 7th position was not the product of an error, but of a brilliant play, a calculated strategy that showed that he was thinking in the long term. Unlike other pilots who give everything in classification for a perfect turn, Leclerc had opted for Sunday. He decided to save an extra game of soft tires for the race, deliberately sacrificing his performance in Q3. That choice, although risky, talked about a pilot who not only runs fast, but understands the game in all its dimensions. And it was that decision that made the difference in the first laps of the GP. With those fresh tires and an impeccable reading of traffic, Charles made his way between cars, quickly approaching his new partner, Lewis Hamilton. What followed was not just a duel on the track, but a nerve and power test. Leclerc knew he had more rhythm. I felt it in each braking, in each traction, in each curve where its SF25 showed more stability and traction than the car in front of it. But I couldn't pass it anyway, not without risking a collision. And in Ferrari, the rubbing among colleagues is a luxury that can no longer be allowed. At that time, when the tension began to tighten inside the cabin, Charles made a decision that defined the rest of the race. He spoke. And not only spoke, he launched a direct message to the heart of Ferrari's strategy. Boys, I sacrificed my classification to be fast in the race, not for us to end up hindering each other. These words, although simple, are the reflection of a mind that operates under pressure with surgical clarity. Leclerc was not asking permission. I was presenting an irrefutable argument. This message was much more than a simple complaint. It was a call-based action call, performance in pure strategy. Leclerc was pushing from within, not only with the accelerator but with his head. He understood that every second lost behind Hamilton, in a clearly slower car for balance problems, could compromise his career and, by extension, the team points. It was not proud. It was efficiency. Lewis Hamilton is not just any pilot. It is a 7-time world champion, a figure that has marked generations and redefined the standards of excellence in modern Formula One. His arrival in Ferrari in 2025 was, without a doubt, one of the most shocking movements in the recent history of sport. But like any deep change, it does not happen without pain. The GP of Spain was, in many ways, the first visible episode of that adaptation, and also the first public crack. When Hamilton found himself on the track with Leclerc, breathing him in the neck, many thought it was simply a momentary performance difference. But what was happening really went much further. Fred Vasseur confirmed it after the race. Hamilton's SF25 was affected by a significant technical problem during the last stint. Although most of the eyes focused on strategy and positions, internally, the team had already detected that Lewis's car was not functioning as it should. His balance was precarious. The rear train responses were erratic. And when that happens, even the best pilot in the world becomes hostage to physics. Vasseur explained it with surgical precision. "We had a problem in the car in the last stint before safety car, and the result is not good." But he made 45 laps ahead of Russell. It is not a minor phrase. It is a public defense of his pilot, but also an admission that, despite his experience and talent, Hamilton was competing all the time with a car that did not allow him to extract the maximum. This, in a sport where the tenths are eternal, make the difference between containing your partner and letting it pass. Hamilton himself, although more reserved than Leclerc, also showed that frustration. In his post-career interviews, he avoided confrontations, but it was clear in saying that the SF25 adaptation process is being longer than he anticipated. In Mercedes, 4 years, Lewis was an integral part of the car development. Its feedback was law. But in Ferrari, it reaches a structure where there are established processes and hierarchies, where Leclerc has been adapting to the car years and where engineers have built a machine that, no matter how much it adjusts, responds to another philosophy. And that shows. From the first weekend in Australia, Hamilton's management style has required adjustments. It has been forced to change the way it addresses the curves, even copying some of the Leclerc techniques such as the coast and brake, that way of releasing the accelerator before to maintain faster speed without overloading the brakes. A style that goes against Lewis's natural instincts, but that has had to adopt in order to approach the expected performance. The case of Spain's GP is not, therefore, a performance drop without explanation. It is the reflection of a reconfiguration process. A pilot who has won everything, trying to rewrite himself in the middle of an environment that still does not dominate completely. And the most revealing thing is that, despite the problems, despite the sacrifice of position, Hamilton did not break down. There were no radio messages asking for explanations, there were no open complaints. There was control, professionalism, and an implicit acceptance that, for now, Leclerc is faster. But this is not the end of the chapter for Lewis. Because if something has demonstrated throughout his career, it is that when he feels challenged, when they underestimate him, it is when he responds better. In Spain, Ferrari asked him to sacrifice his position for the greater good. He did it, but he won't forget. And when he recovers trust, when the SF25 aligns with his style, it will be another who has to give way. What we saw in the Spain Grand Prix was not just an exchange of positions. It was a real-time radiography of the internal state of Ferrari. It was the raw exhibition of the dynamics of power, the limits of the pilots, and of the silent but firm leadership of Frédéric Vasseur. Charles Leclerc took the initiative, and Ferrari gave him a green light. Lewis Hamilton accepted the decision, but not making clear that the path to its adaptation will be long but not sterile. It was a small moment on the track but gigantic in meaning. This episode not only conditions what happened in Montmeló, conditions everything that will come. Because now we know that Ferrari will not marry the names but with the numbers. That Vasseur is willing to make difficult decisions if that means maintaining the operation of the team at its most efficient point. And that, although today it was Leclerc who led the play, Hamilton is already taking note. Because if something is safe in Formula One, it is that hierarchies change as fast as tire compounds in a weekend with variable climate. And now it's your turn. I want to know your perspective. Do you agree with Ferrari's decision to ask for the change of positions? Do you think it was the right thing based on performance, or do you think they should allow them to fight freely? And what do you think of the handling of Vasseur so far? Subscribe if you are not signed and activate the bell of notifications.